fight the foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go! Go Toronto Argos, go, go, go! Pull together, fight the foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go Toronto, go! Go Argos, go, go, go!
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 7 of the Argo Bounce live audio show with my co-host Nick Small and yours truly, Chris Pomay, here on this Wednesday, August 30th, 2023. And again, just want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, or known as X now, and also our audio platforms, and the Argo Bounce live audio show featuring the CFL's Toronto Argonauts, 18-time Grey Cup champions, is on WQEE 99.1 FM in Georgia. And I'm looking forward to episodes 7 tonight as Nick and I break down the Argonauts' 39-31 win over Calgary on Friday night at BMO Field on the CNE game. And we'll get a preview of the Argos' upcoming QEW rivalry game with the Hamilton Tiger Cats this Monday at 3:30 at Tim Hortons Field. And I'm going to bring on my co-host of the Argo Bounce live audio show, Nick Small. Good evening, Nick. How you doing, buddy?
Doing good, Chris. Huge win at the CNE against Calgary. It was definitely not the way I expected them to win. But I am glad that we successfully prognosticated that win. It gives them a huge advantage as they continue this 10-game consecutive games played streak. Now that they've used up their last bye week, it's a huge opportunity, and we get to see them continue rolling, hopefully to Labor Day game in Hamilton this week. So.
Absolutely. It wasn't a pretty win on Friday night, but they got the job done, 39-31. I knew the Argos were capable of putting up points, especially after their loss to Calgary a few weeks ago in Calgary, but I didn't see the Stampeders scoring 31 points. But one thing, Nick, I wanted to say, even when the Argos have their struggles or Chad Kelly has an interception or two, I like the fact they know how to bounce back from adversity. And I think it's good for this team to have some adversity because you're going to face it in the playoffs. Thoughts?
Yeah, given the way that the Stampeders have played their last several games, you definitely didn't expect Jake Mayer to go out and throw for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. A lot of that, I think, got contributed to just some really weak defensive back play. And it was a weird game because you don't normally see that from our defensive backs. And a lot of it was due to injury, which we'll get to later, I'm sure. But yeah, there was a lot of breakdowns, and whether it was by communication or by play design, or if it was kind of part of the strategy, thinking, oh, Jake Mayer doesn't throw deep very often, so let's just focus on shutting down the short yardage passes. Whatever it was, it almost didn't work out for Toronto. And fortunately, given that how many times the defense has kept the team in games, slow scoring games, it was kind of nice to see a change where the offense was able to really rally and put together some really nice big deep passes of their own to be able to bail the defense out in exchange.
Hey, before we go further, I just wanted to say rest in peace, deepest sympathies to the Stubler family. I guess Rich Stubler, he passed away recently at 74, and he was involved with the Canadian Football League for 4 decades. 83 to 89 was Hamilton, 90 was Toronto, and then he came back to the Argos in 03 to 2007, and then came back to the Argos in 08. 2016 and 221. One of the best defensive coordinators in the CFL history. And I just wanted to mention deep the sympathies and condolences to the Stubler family and the Toronto Argonauts.
Yeah, Rich Stubler has such a tremendous history with the CFL and has left such a big legacy. And I don't think people realize how much he's done for so many players across this league. And it's definitely a huge loss, along with some of our other losses that we've had over the last couple of weeks. It's been a tough go for Argos fans, and yeah, it's I mean, it's a part of life, but it's also really tough for someone that has been around for so long and has seemingly always been there. Yeah, it's a huge blow to the league. He's got 5 Grey Cup championships to his name, and easily goes among the legends of Canadian football. So yeah, my condolences go out as well to the family of Rich Stubler, and all I can say as an Argos fan is thank you for all your years of service and hard work and getting this team to championship games.
Now, Nick, obviously I wasn't at the game and you were. Did they do a little piece for him there at the game?
No, I think because they didn't announce his passing until it was after the game. It was
Okay.
He passed away on Sunday and the game was
Okay.
on Friday, so we
Okay.
didn't know about it when it happened.
Okay. I imagine the next home game they'll have something for him because, like I said, 4 decades in the CFL and a number of stints with the Toronto Argonauts, and considered one of the best defensive coordinators and also a players coach as well. So I just wanted to bring that up. And also, before we get back to the Argos, I just wanted to say I'm so happy for the Edmonton Elks. I never thought I'd say this because they used to dominate the league in the 70s and 80s and 90s, but I'm so happy they got that 22-game losing streak off their backs at Commonwealth Stadium. Another good win, 2 in a row. They're actually in the playoff picture now, and I'm so happy for Chris Jones and the Elks. And Nick, quick thoughts on the Elks before we get back to the Argos.
Yeah, it was big for Edmonton to finally break that curse and to finally get that win. It was all the other fans were like, yeah, we want to see Edmonton get that home win, but not against our guy or our team. And unfortunately, Ottawa is the team that it ended up happening to. And but it you know what it really does is it just draws more questions at Edmonton because Jones refused to start Trey Ford for so long, but clearly he's the best quarterback on the team. So and I think you could translate the same thing to Jacksonville right now with Nathan Rourke being dropped down through. He cleared waivers, fortunately, but yeah, it's just such a weird thing. I will die on the hill if they got something against Canadians, man. But
nobody picked up Rourke on waivers.
Nobody picked him up, surprisingly.
Wow.
So he did go down to practice roster, I guess, in Jacksonville. So
I'm shocked. I really thought somebody would have picked him up because to me, there's no reason why he couldn't be at least a number 2 quarterback in the NFL. He can.
Yeah, I guess nobody likes to think they're desperate enough to take the risk. I don't know.
I understand why he went down there, but you know what? I still think it would have been better for him to play one more year here and dominate the league. But I don't know. Hey, he made a decision, and I do hope he gets his opportunity in the National Football League. I as much as I want him to come back to the CFL, I'm rooting for him because he's Canadian and also he played in the CFL, and best of wishes with him with the Jaguars. And Doug Peterson, who was a backup quarterback, is now a head coach. I'm hoping they give him an opportunity and eventually he can be the number 2. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence is submitted as the number 1, but hopefully eventually Rourke will work his way up to number 2 then.
Yeah, I mean we've seen it in the CFL this year with all the injuries to starting quarterbacks. Unfortunately, the way the game is, often it comes from the starters and the backups getting injured for you to get your opportunity, and so it just makes it that much more important that you take big advantage of it when you've got the chance, especially at the quarterback position.
Absolutely. And now to get back to the Argos, Nick, First question is, what were your thoughts on the Argos win over Calgary Stampeders, and what was it like at C&E night at BMO Field?
Yeah, well, for in terms of the game itself, it was successful prediction. We picked the Argonauts to win, and with the revenge game sort of meant motivation, getting them above, and it did work out. But it definitely was not the way I think anybody expected. I think, well, like I said, I thought it was going to be either a complete blowout for the Argonauts or the other way around. They get completely shut down. I don't think anybody thought Calgary was going to put up the amount of points they did. As for the second part, the atmosphere, it was amazing. Like they were just shy of 18,000. I think it was 17,907 if I remember.
Yeah.
So the attendance was great, and it was definitely one of the. It looked that way both on I think on TV, aside from if it panned up to the east end zone, or the east sideline, which is always closed. But you look everywhere else in the field, and there was not very many empty seats left. And even in the north end zone, they had opened that up to extra seating, and that was probably a good 3,000 to 4,000 people there as well. So it really helped the look on TV, and it made the atmosphere really great because it was combined with all the CNE stuff in the background. You had so many onlookers from outside looking in on that game, wondering what was going on, hearing the cheers. When the drones flew overhead, that said like "Let's go." It was "Let's go to the X" was the second part of the drone thing, but when everybody saw "Let's go" in dark blue, everybody thought it was for the Argos. So all the fans burst out in cheers and support. It was just really fantastic.
Do you think that extra stands was just open for the CNE game, or do you think they're going to try to do that the rest of the home season?
Well, those stands themselves have been there for every Argonauts game, I think, this year. In terms of keeping it open, I'm hoping that I think it's going to be kind of like a floodgate situation where if they think they've sold so many seats in the rest of the stadium, they'll open it up. I think it's a good thing because as we've seen in the south end zone and the fan zone area, the most energy is concentrated in those end zones, and kind of like in basketball when guys are doing their free throws and everybody's clapping like the boomers and making loud noise to distract them. You see the same thing in the CFL when the opposing kicker's coming in trying to make a clutch 50-yard field goal into the wind to try to make something happen. You want to be that distraction, and when you're kicking on that north side, although more often than not you're kicking in the wind that way, you've got the one security guard standing there in blue or yellow to make sure that nobody goes up there. It's a lot different than when you've got 1,000 screaming fans in the end zone. So I hope they keep it open because it provides more opportunities to offer budget tickets to families or people lower income who might not have the kind of funds to be able to go to so many more games, like especially compared to like the Leafs or the Raptors or the Jays or whoever. So to have that sort of budget option available is, I think, a good thing because revenue is revenue, regardless of whether it's $20 or $200 a seat. I think it would be a good move, so I'm hoping we'll see it continuing on into the future.
Nick, I did see some video footage of fans getting ejected from the game. I understand the CFL's put microchips in the football or whatever, but it doesn't give the Argonauts a good look when their fans are getting ejected for it. If they're that concerned about the footballs going in the stands because of the technology they put into the football, they should be putting up nets on both sides of the goalposts.
Yeah, well,
the problems.
The
Go ahead.
problem is it's a tough pill to swallow because for so long we've seen that Argonaut fans have been able to keep the balls, and we spoke to Boris Beatty at the very beginning of the year about it, and we were the only team in the league that did that. We would let fans keep the footballs that were kicked on field goals and extra points, and it was inherently, fans don't know this, but it's inherently a big disadvantage because those balls for kicking have to get worked in a separate way than you would for any other football. So it's costing the team having to work in those footballs to be game day prepared, and it is an inherent disadvantage, and it is a tough pill to swallow that now that technology's in, and it's not a patent thing. Like, it's clearly not that fans are wanting to keep the balls because they want to get the technology out of it or anything. Really, it just has to do with that they want that costs money, and it makes the balls more expensive to produce, so they can't afford continuing to give them away anymore. And I mean, on the flip side of that, I think you can then get in the argument, well, as we've seen, Genius Sports hasn't really been up to task over this year so far at making the stats accurate. And how is having this chip in the ball going to prove it when they can't even get right how many rushing yards a running back has to the nearest 10 yards, let alone saying that, or penalty yards where they've said a team has had 1,000 and 1,100 yards in penalties or something stupid like that. So it's I'm hoping that they'll be able to use then that chip data and provide cool things like the Google Statcast for baseball, being able to say like, oh look, Boris Beatty on average kicks the ball at this speed off the tee, and if you or like kicking with an into or with the wind in Toronto, for instance, it adds this speed at 18 kilometers an hour on average, and the ball travels 20 yards further this way versus that way. Like things like that would be a huge advantage and a way to sort of flaunt that data. But so far, we have seen absolutely none of it. And that's where we're hoping, I think, as fans, to see some tangible results. Otherwise, it's kind of just a bum waste of money.
One thing, Nick, I understand why they're doing it, but they should have done this at the start of the season. To wait to doing it at the CNE game is a bad look. And also, I think how they can solve this problem is they should have done it at the beginning of the season, obviously, but they also should put up nets. And that would have solved the problem as well. So I just, some of these fans that get kicked out, I don't know if they're season ticket holders or this is their first time going to games, but it's not going to give them a good impression. And I'm not blaming the team for this, but the league really should have had the Argonauts enforce this at the beginning of the season instead of waiting to the CNE game, which is their biggest draw of the season, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I think the nature of BMO Field is different than a lot of stadiums because if you kind of look around the league, like Toronto used to have the netting down at the Sky Dome, but when you look at most of the other stadiums that teams play at that are open, they don't usually have netting either, and a lot of those end zone seats are kind of open areas rather than, and they're further back from the end zones, whereas at BMO Field especially, they're right up close to the action. And it's one of the advantages that BMO Field has among the rest of the league, that you've got such a great vantage point no matter where you sit. But yeah, it does bring problems like this where you've got it's too close, and especially with someone like Beatty who will always bring the driver out, whether it's an extra point chip shot or a 30-yarder versus a 60-yarder. It doesn't matter. He'll always go all out on every kick. So and you can't tell a kicker, hey, just change the way you kick the ball. You wouldn't tell Dustin Johnson or Tiger Woods or whoever to change their swing. So it's yeah, I can't say about the individuals getting ejected, whether or not it was new or experienced people, or whether they put the value in the football over staying at the game or whatnot. That I can't say, but yeah, I think from the side of the implementation of it, it didn't help that they chose the CNE game to roll it out, at least for the Argonauts, and to do it midway was
that's
not
my
a
point.
good
That's
impression.
my point. Yes.
Yeah, it
That's my point.
just
And
doesn't
what I think they
work.
should do for the rest of the year, yes, it doesn't give it a look. What I would do if I was in the Argos promotions department, just for the rest of the year, I'm not saying next year, just say anyone catches a football, in exchange for the football, we're going to give you an Argos t-shirt or something like that. And how much does the t-shirt cost? Not that much. So to me, I think for the rest of the year, if fans get footballs, if they don't want to put the netting up, just say, hey, if you give us the football back, we'll give you an Argo t-shirt just good PR. That's all.
Yeah, I don't know. It might need to be a bit more than a t-shirt compared to a
Okay.
multi-$100 football.
Okay, but you know what I mean? Just some
Yeah.
kind of Argo swag just for the rest of this year, and then next year they can figure it out. But it's just a PR look. But I don't want to spend the whole time talking about that. But it's just But other than that, I think it looked good on TV. It looked like a good crowd. The weather was good. Now, Nick, I got to ask you this: some people leave at halftime to go to the CNE? Because I've been hearing that too. A lot of fans were leaving at halftime to go to the Canadian National Exhibition.
With a game like that, absolutely
Yeah.
not. The stadium was full from beginning to end, and I don't know who said that, but they were completely wrong, or they were not at the game, or they were not watching, because the game was close at halftime. Like, this game was
Yes.
tight from beginning to end. It wasn't like
Yeah.
some of these, like the last 4 games Calgary has played. I think I probably fell asleep around halftime. Like, they've been absolute snooze fest of games, and probably some of the worst games I've seen the Stampeders play ever. This was one of the most exciting games probably since the week before against Ottawa. But yeah, the last 2 games that the Argos have played now at home have been just quite special and exciting, and just there was so much crowd engagement, there was so much noise, there was so much back and forth play. It was absolutely entertaining to watch from beginning to finish, and if people did leave halfway through the game, then they probably just didn't find the taste to CFL football, because I don't know how you could leave in a game like this, which really showcased, I think, the league at its high points, when it's a high scoring offensive matchup, lots of deep passes, guys finding openings in coverage. You had like the Javon Leake return at the end. You had the cannon, fireworks. It was just an awesome carnival atmosphere in the background to it all. And yeah, I didn't see that impression given the crowd that was there. It was pretty packed for the entirety of the game.
All right. The Argos did get off to a good start, 14-0, and then they had their law, and then they managed to get it back before the end of the first half. But what did you like about the Argos overall in the first half of this game, and what did you think of their adjustments in the second half against Calgary?
Yeah, so well, in the first half, I actually thought they were kind of looking rough at the beginning. The way I break down most games at BMO Field is a lot of it has to do with the wind and who has the advantage of the wind in what quarter. So the Argos had the wind at the beginning of the game with the ball, and Calgary would then get it in the second half, but they would have the wind in the third quarter and facing the wind in the fourth. So what really I break down the B-Mill Field game is that when you have the wind, you really want to try to take advantage of that quarter and try to, I usually say at least 2 scoring plays, full touchdowns. If you can do that with the wind, force your opponents to less than 7. Ideally, forcing them to no more than a field goal is great, but there can be an odd touchdown or 2. And then if you can march down the field and put up at least 1 touchdown into the wind to counter what will probably be your offensive drives for your opponents, that usually works out. And what was weird in this game was Toronto was into that game plan. They were up 14-0 after a bit of a shaky start. You saw that march down the field. Chad Kelly threw the interception on what probably should have been at least a field goal, but most likely a touchdown otherwise. Ball just, I think, a little too hard thrown and a little too high for
It happens. It happens.
Yeah. But yeah, fortunately they were able to still rally back, get some points on the board, and then, but yeah, once the tables flipped in the second quarter, what really changed was, I think Mayer was really able to just find those busts in coverage and sail a ball out deep. It wasn't like it was a fantastic throw that the receiver had to make a big play to catch. Like, they were usually really wide open, and as long as the ball was generally close to the guy, he was able to catch it, no issue. But then, of course, Chad was able to sort of counter that himself, which was the really big high point of the Argos offense in that game. Because when Mayer was doing his deep throws in busted coverage, it was all with the wind. But the Chad Kelly one, the Coxie, I think it was to Coxie. That was on the flea flicker. That was a bust as well, but that was into the wind. And I might have think the other deep pass touchdown, but the one deep pass touchdown I was thinking of was the one that was caught by Coxie at, I think it was around the 30-yard line. And it was into the wind, but it almost looked like it was going to be overthrown, and Coxie really had to rush out and stretch to make it. And fortunately, that little last oomph got it. And as a former receiver, I can tell you that was just so much fun of a play to pull off, and so rewarding when you're able to just get that extra stretch out and make such a spectacular catch. So it was really great just how fired up the team was and determined, even at halftime, that they thought they should have been up by more, and they were able to carry that throughout the rest of the game as fire to keep playing well offensively, which is we've seen sometimes has been a struggle at times.
Yeah, we'll get on to Javon Leak in a few minutes, but the next question I wanted to ask you, Nick, overall assessment on the play of the Argos defense and their secondary against Calgary. I found in the second half, especially the fourth quarter, I thought the defense tightened up a little bit, and I thought the front four got some pressure on Jake Mayer, especially Dwayne Hendricks, and I wanted to get your thoughts.
Yeah, the front four was really solid throughout this game. They were keeping pressure on Jake Mayer throughout it. And earlier in the game, there was some times where he may have slipped away a bit, but there were some other times in the game, especially in the second half, where they were really able to shut him down. And there were some really big sacks, and fortunately, no flags were called for hitting him too close to the head or up high on the shoulder. So I'm glad that they were able to rectify that little struggle. Yeah, the big story of it, I think, the breakdown of the defensive backs, and early in the game, a lot of it was just, I think, bust and coverage. And when you look at the scheming in their sort of cover three, cover fours, it seemed like that just guys weren't on the same page. And the moment where it really kind of took effect was when Deshaun Amos went down. Did you want to talk about that? Can I talk about?
Yes.
Yeah. So, Deshaun Amos on a play that was, I think, around the 10-yard line, maybe a little before that. I think he just collided with someone at a weird angle, diving in to make a tackle, and he must have gotten stepped on or rolled on right in the ankle port. And the way he reacted, like, you knew it was bad, because I could see him where I was, and he was flailing and screaming and threw his helmet off, and the things you never want to see with a player. And even because Amos had played for both Calgary, you had players and coaching staff on both teams go up to him, and as soon as everybody's over there, you taking a knee, it's bad. The cart came over. He did come back later to watch, and had the soft cast and the roller scooter thing to put your knee on when you've got a cast on. So I'm speculating, but it's probably a fracture. So that's probably 8 weeks without him. And speaking again from someone who's broken a body part playing football, 8 weeks plus probably 2 weeks of rehab time. Like, he might be ready just barely before the playoffs if we're lucky. But we'll see. So that's really threw one wrench in, because then Josh Haggerty had to come in, played much this season, his own injuries. I think he played at the very beginning of the year, and then only got back, I think, last week or the week before. And then he goes down later due to injury. And I think his was I don't want to say broken arm, but he did have his arm later on the sidelines in a soft splint as well, like not a cast, but splinted. So it might have been a sprain or something, but he got injured too. So now late in the game, what I think almost helped them tighten up was that they were able to, because of the offensive positions they were in, and leading through most of that second half, they were able to, they moved Pickett as sort of that halfback spot, kind of filling in where they're missing a DB. They had Edouard in, and they ran a really simple cover three, having all their linebackers in. So you had just this really weird scenario that you wouldn't normally see, with four linebackers in for Toronto, and fortunately it worked out. Just Calgary didn't have the time to take advantage of speed breaks, and I think it also fell to the Argo strategy, because Mayer's been so often throwing shorter passes under pressure in their system, but he's never been a guy to really take advantage of deep open plays or even throw one-on-one. He only threw those deep passes on guys who were unbelievably wide open, and the Argos never really gave that up once they held that lead late in the game.
Any other injuries from that game? And I'm just wondering what the deal with Maurice Cornell is. Nobody's saying a word. I originally thought he was going to be back in July, and now it's going on September. But just thoughts on how big of a loss that is for the Argonauts team.
Yeah, I mean, Amos is by far one of the biggest losses for this team because he was by far their number one safety and has just played fantastic both last year and through this year. And yeah, it really definitely puts a question in the safety position. You wonder if, because I think it's pretty clear that Amos is going to be out for at least a couple months, if I had to
Yes,
guess.
I agree with you.
It's like and with Haggerty being hurt and plus being hurt previously, you don't know to what extent his injury is. I got to think they might be shopping around before the deadline or potentially picking someone up from one of the NFL cuts. That's an option. And yeah, going to Maurice Cornell, we've seen as guys have gotten injured, other guys have been ready enough to come in. So yeah, well, but the problem is Cornell's not really a safety either. So it's going to be a tough challenge to decide whether they want to play one person out of position or if they want to kind of shuffle everybody over. So then like every kind of you've got three guys playing a different position, but it's less of an impact as it would be the skill drop. Three guys play different spots versus one guy playing a completely new spot. We'll find out if the way things have gone. I gotta think just because of the way he's been, Qantas Stiggers is going to be that guy to go now play safety because I think he's played every defensive position now between boundary and field, halfbacks and corners.
Yeah, my only concern with this team going forward, obviously, is not the offense, obviously, not the special teams. It's just the defense because they've been giving up 31, 32 points a game. So, and now the injuries in the secondary. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, well, you got to stay healthy and we'll cross your fingers. Now, Nick,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, what did you like about this game plan better against Calgary the second time than the first time? What did you
Um,
what changes did you see from Ryan Dinwiddie and the coaching staff?
well, having Chad Kelly play the whole game was
Damn
definitely a big
helps.
advantage.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think by having Chad be able to play that full game, it enabled having someone who was confident and being able to take risks throwing the ball down the field. The problem I think we saw with that game previously was Calgary played a shutdown defense after Chad went out, and the only real drive that Cam Dukes had that was really able to get them within scoring position was that very first drive. And like I think I said, Cam at times has kind of played like Chad Kelly his first year in the league, where if things aren't going right, you kind of tuck it and run, and that's where you get someone like Hill to spy and shut it down. So I think offensively, it's hard to say just because there wasn't a lot of Chad Kelly makes such a big factor. Defensively, I think you kind of see the cons of how they adjusted their strategy because in a lot of ways it didn't really work because they were shutting down the shorter plays, which Mayer has kind of always thrown so far this year. But because of focusing so much on shutting down the screens and the swings and the quick, you left guys wide open, and whether some of it again with the safety injuries and having new guys coming in and moving around in the middle of a game, there's going to be miscommunications and busts because of that. But when there weren't busts, there wasn't really a whole lot for Mayer to throw to, and we saw that. And the D line itself really had to step it up, and they did in this game by keeping pressure and forcing Mayer to throw the ball as quick as possible before he could see those wide open guys.
Yeah, Kelly in this game, 20 out of 31, 361, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and 1 rushing touchdown.
Mm.
But what I like about Chad is it's sort of like McLeod Bethel Thompson, gunslinger mentality. You're going to have your successes, you're going to get your touchdowns and stuff, but you're also going to get your interceptions. But he has that. What I like about him, we mentioned this earlier in the show, is he bounces back quickly from adversity, similar to McLeod Bethel Thompson, who had his share of interceptions in his career, and he overcame them, and that's huge with a quarterback.
Yeah, Chad's ability to not give up on the long ball is also a huge advantage. Yeah, we've seen at times where McLeod sometimes has struggled to get the deep ball to wide open guys, but so far Chad beat in that, so that's a big advantage.
Absolutely. And this leads to my next question, Nick. What are your thoughts on Curly Gittens Jr. and Chad Kelly's connection this season in terms of on field chemistry and protection between them? Because Gittens, I know, has been hurt for a couple games with rib injury and stuff like that, but he hasn't really had that breakout game this year so far.
Yeah, I thought this game was actually a pretty good one, and you could see that they were trying to get Curly going, and some Curly was targeted quite a bit during this game. And although he only had 50 yards, I thought a couple of the plays for him were the interception play and one unfortunately was targeted to him and thrown maybe a little too high. But you saw that there were a lot of times where if Chad kind of didn't have somebody open or was trying to find a guy on one, he had faith in getting it to Curly Gittens. And unfortunately, there were some where it didn't really quite work out. But yeah, you can see he's definitely trying to get Curly going. And in a way, it can sometimes be a good thing too, even though Curly himself isn't putting up big numbers, because by targeting him and forcing him into being double coverage, it's keeping other guys open, as we've seen with some of the yardage that that Coxie and Daniels had. Both were only 3 for 4, but Coxie got 102 yards and Daniels got 77 yards, respectively, with a touchdown each. So
Pick your poison when you're playing the Argonauts and their
yeah,
wide receivers.
Yeah, that abundance in versatility and the fact that they don't have a one-star guy like Hamilton that they're playing next week. It really helps your strategy because you know somebody's going to be open and you just got to find them. Whereas you're not trying to say, oh, let's get the ball to X player because he's their only good receiver.
Absolutely. And this leads to my next question. And who would have thought in their 150-year history there'd be a new record for punt return touchdowns? But in terms of all-time Argonaut special teams players and kickoff punt returners, where does Javon Leake rank up there with this team record fourth touchdown returner this season?
Yeah, he's having himself quite the season, especially with those touchdowns. Great blocking too, and some fantastic schemes. It's yeah, it's hard to tell. I thought we had this potential in League earlier, like in last year, but for it to really execute and to perform, it's like saying it's going to happen and kind of not knowing. So for it to happen has been tremendous. And in terms of ranking it, like I don't know if he's going to be up at like the top, but I think you got to be at least in Chad Owens conversation. I don't know. Pinball might still be a bit up there. It might down, but yeah, the 4 return touchdowns is just one of the crazy stories of this year, and especially for the one he got in this last game that gave them the win. Basically, was huge.
I did call it that he was going to get a touchdown in that game, and every time he gets ball, every time he gets the ball, Nick, he is a threat to score, and that's what I love about the CFL, because the NFL has kind of gotten rid of the special teams, and the CFL, man, there's so many ways to score, and it's just fun watching him with that football, and he can bring it to the house every game, and I wouldn't be shocked. I'm going to say this now: wouldn't be shocked if he brought it to the house Monday in Hamilton as well.
Yeah, his yardage stats kind of are underwhelming on average because there were also 2 no yards plays, and the way that read it is that even though the no yards is a 15-yard penalty, they treat the return in the stats as, regardless of it being applied by the penalty, it's just treated as a return for X yards that they would have had otherwise. So if Leak catches the ball and a guy's right there and tackles him and he only walks 2 steps forward, it's only a 2-yard it counts as a 2-yard return, even though it's a 15-yard no yards on top of that. So although 19 yards return, he was averaging probably closer to 25. And yeah, the big return TD was huge. My only thing with the Hamilton return with the game is just the the special teams coordinator Reinbold for Hamilton is really good, and they outsmart him in Hamilton. So I'm a little bullish. Mickey Donovan's got his work cut out for him to potentially overturn that.
That leads to my next question, Nick. Any concerns about the team heading into their Labor Day game against the Cats on the road, who are coming off their best game of the year against the BC Lions, 30-13 in BC, and they basically did a nice job shutting down that Lions offense.
Yeah, I think to me, because they've lost back to back to Saskatchewan and now Hamilton, I think more of the problem something with BC rather than with Hamilton. That being said, I look back at the last time the Hamilton and Toronto faced off in Hamilton, and what I look at what the Argos did really well was that they shut down Butler, who had a breakout game there against his former team in BC last week. So I think if they kind of stick to a similar game plan defensively, the one question, of course, that's kind of my concern is what that safety and sort of halfback like, because you are on one of the best safeties in the league with Deshaun Amos being gone. And then offensively, I'm not quite as worried because I think I trust in the way that they've ran all year that Chad and Coach Dinwiddie will be able to find and exploit the openings and pick Hamilton apart in that respect.
Well, like I said, Hamilton's going to be at home and they're going to be fired up. And this is really a huge game for them, too, because obviously I think the Argonauts are going to run away with the East at 8-1. But I think Hamilton and Montreal are going to battle for home field advantage in the East semifinal. So this game is important to Toronto, but it's also really important to Hamilton as well because the Alouettes got blown out by Winnipeg, and obviously 6-4 is still a good record, but they came back to reality against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers as well this past week.
Hamilton lost that head-to-head matchup in Hamilton against Montreal, so that's a bit of a blow against them there too. I think what the big selling point for Toronto is, like, if you this game in Hamilton on Labor Day, I mean, for one, just what the Labor Day game's about, it's a huge big thing if you win it and you clinch the Harold Ballard Cup. But the potential where after winning this game, going into a home and home against Montreal, if you win this game and one of the two games at Montreal, the first of which is in Toronto, if you do that, you've basically clinched already. Reward is that now you kind of get the sort of unofficial bye week where you can rest players that you normally still lock up the position you would have to play in a game like in Ottawa in October. So it's a huge advantage for Toronto if they're able to win this game and roll apart the East and not have to worry about the later part of the season. I think they're going to treat it just in the same mentality they have, and you're not going to see any big resting players now or anything. They'll be in it to win it. But yeah, like you said, Hamilton has a lot at stake for themselves, and I'm hosting the Grey Cup. I know it hasn't been the season they've kind of wanted, but never say die. Keep that faith alive, because if all you have to be is in the playoffs, and anything can happen after that, as we saw 2 years.
Absolutely, Nick. And this leads to my next question. What are some keys to an Argonaut win over the Cats on Monday afternoon at Tim Hortons Field?
Yeah, I think offensively, shut down Butler. Defensively, your safe. Sorry, defensively, shut down Butler and have your safety situation fixed. I think offensively, you just keep doing what you're doing and keep stretching the field. And so, I mean, yeah, Chad had those interceptions, but other than that, he's been golden all year. So, and then special teams, I think I don't need the or anything crazy, but I think you want to see Jeff Reinbold that they can have a good special teams game. I think if you defeat the guy who's been sort of the guru of special teams play in the CFL for the last 2 decades, you'll be in a good spot. So just good field position, special teams wise. Keep doing what you're doing offensively, and hopefully resolve your safety issue and shut down Butler.
For me, is a strong start. If they can jump on the Cats right away, keep those fans from being noisy, and also think turnovers. If they can get some turnovers from the Cats and the Argonauts offense gets the ball in great field position with Chad Kelly in that, I really think turnovers could decide this game. And strong start, and we'll see.
Yeah,
And also, and I agree with your other point. They got to contain Butler, the running back.
Yeah, for Hamilton, I think the big thing, if we're talking sort of devil's advocate now, I think the big thing is you can't fall into the trap that everybody seems to do against the Argos defensively, is that you can't throw the ball with the 5-yard passes that they're giving you, because you'll get great yardage. Your stats will look good. You'll have 350 plus yards and 1 INT, but you won't score points. You gotta have. I think what Mayer kind of showed against the Argos defensively is that there are situations deep down the field where you can get the ball lobbed, and guys have been afraid to throw it on one-on-one coverage, and so yeah, we'll see if this was just kind of a one-off fluke thing from the Argonauts strategy against Calgary to be even more aggressive against the short. If it might spark a trend, what happens on Labor Day.
All right, and we're going to wrap this up. Got a couple more questions. Nick, we're going to do our normal Argos 3 stars of the game against Calgary. I'll let you go first this time, Nick.
Okay. Well, I'll give a shout out to Boris Beatty because he averaged 53 yards and 75 yards longest on his punts, doing double duty because John Haggerty was injured. I think we discussed that a little bit. John did come out to hold his field goals like kind of expected, but Haggerty didn't punt. And Beatty was also 1 for 1 on a 39-yard field goal, and he made 5 extra points. So give us a shout out, continuing doing what he's doing well. Other guys I got to shout out. I think I got to shout out the offensive line for the Argonauts. They've played amazing so far this year, and there was this line graph I saw recently that showed the sacks of quarterbacks, and the Argos are in a completely different tier of everybody else. Like the Argos line is in one spot, and you almost have to double the sacks the Argos have to get to. So it's just been insane how well this O line has done, and protecting Chad Kelly, and they're a big reason for their success. And then third star, I think I'll give it to Javon Leake. I mean, it's low hanging fruit, but for him to set a record for the Argonauts and to continue just taking advantage of any openings he's got, and just really good punt return average so far this year. He's gets my credit as the third in no of our game.
All right, for me, the first star is Chad Kelly. 20 out of 31, 361, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and another rushing touchdown. And it's the fact that when he does make mistakes or makes mistakes or whatever, he doesn't let it bother him or fester away. And like you mentioned before, Nick, some quarterbacks, when they throw interceptions, are hesitant to go deep again in that game. And Kelly has got a mental and physical toughness to him. And that's how you win championships with quarterbacks as well. So Chad Kelly, number 1, as always. The number 2 star, I've got Coxie, because he had, 3 catches for 102 yards, 1 touchdown. Impact player again. The third star, I'm going to split it up between a defensive player and a special teams player. The defensive player, Dwayne Hendricks, and I'm going to go with Devon Leake as well, because Hendricks, I thought, was an impact in this game, especially in the fourth quarter. And Javon Leake, like I said, his touchdown in the fourth quarter basically sealed the deal for the Argos in this game.
Yeah, I was kind of torn. If I had to pick a D lineman, I was kind of torn between Hendricks and Arimalotti. Really important sacks when they needed to. So an honorable mention to those guys as well.
Absolutely. And we're going to wrap this up with what we normally do, our CFL picks of the week. Nick, did you want to go first, or did you want me to go first?
Sure. I'll go first this time.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just bringing up the schedule to make sure I don't forget anybody. BC at Montreal. I'm pick Montreal at home. I like to see what BC does to bounce back. That could potentially be a toss up to which Jekyll or Hyde we're going to see. Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. Yeah, I gotta pick Winnipeg. Fortunately, Toronto and Hamilton. This is a tricky game because I feel like Toronto is kind of becoming due for a loss, and given our trend on Labor Day, that it might not go our way. But I'll stick with the blue because 8-1 potential chance to go 9-1 on better. It might be part of the curse, but yeah, I'll take Toronto for that game. I'm gonna say it's gonna be one of the closer games, though. I think Hamilton will be in it right till the end, so I'm gonna say a 7-point margin of victory. Let's go with 33-26. I think that is math. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, my
And
picks.
sorry, Edmonton, Calgary. I'm gonna pick Edmonton for 3 in a row.
Okay, and we'll go with my picks. I'm going with Montreal, and then I'm going to go with an upset. Saskatchewan's 5-5, and they're at home. And I think Winnipeg's been on a roll, and I really think Saskatchewan is going to sneak out a game. So I'm going to go with Montreal winning. Saskatchewan was the upset of the week. I'm going to go with the Argos over the Cats by 3 points. I think 27-24. I think a late Boris Beatty field goal, maybe even overtime, wins it for the Argonauts. And I agree with you on the last game. I like the way Edmonton is playing right now, and I'm going to go with them beating the Stampeders in Calgary.
Now that they've won 2 in a row, and broken their home curse, I don't think there's anyone in the league except maybe Calgary fans who don't want to see playoffs. That would be just the wildest story for this year.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, right now, Ottawa is really struggling under Bob Dice, and I really can't see the Red Blacks making the playoffs. But as for the West, I really. When's the last time? I'm going to ask you this, Nick. When's the last time you saw a Calgary and Edmonton? Calgary's 3-8 and Edmonton 2-9.
It's been a long time. I mean, Calgary's been just one of the premier teams in the league since I think they said their last losing season was 2007. So long time since we've seen a Calgary team struggle, and yeah, Edmonton as well. Like they've been almost sort of like Toronto, where they'll have 1 or 2 or 3 really rough years, but then they'll kind of seem to rally and get it together and get a cup kind of down in the dumps again. This set time was a little bit different just because of the name change and all of that, the politics associated with it. But it is nice to see them start to turn the corner. And yeah, it's one of these weird football things. And I mean, it wasn't that long ago where we were saying, can Winnipeg ever win the cup? And now they've won 2 of the last 3 and are kind of back to what everybody seems to think a dynasty. But I mean, you don't have to look. First year they were still a terrible team, so it's the way the CFL is in a 9-team league. I think that everybody kind of top, and then everybody at some point it comes crashing down, and they've got to pick up the pieces.
And before we wrap up this show, yes or no, BC Lions, are they legitimate, or do you think they're a pretender?
That is tough. I think BC is legitimate, but for whatever reason, they're not offensive strategies that got them in the year. The Winnipeg loss I can understand because you don't slap Winnipeg in the teeth and then expect to roll over them in their house a couple of weeks later. But the Saskatchewan Hamilton games, it's just the Saskatchewan game in that Adams just seemed to throw a lot of interceptions and just not seem to target. Hamilton game, they were playing too passive offensively because I think only one turnover was an interception, but I think there was a fumble and a turnover on downs, like things that didn't really have necessarily to do with Vernon Adams. So, yeah, it up, and I'm not gonna speculate because I still think you go Vernon Adams, but yeah, you got to figure out some of that magic that you had at the beginning of the year because you doesn't need Nathan Rourke for them to play big games, especially at home and to win. But got to find that magic.
All right, Nick. Well, we're going to wrap up our show, but I just want to say thank you for coming on episode 7 of the Argo Bounce Live audio show. And we will be doing another show next week. Not sure which day and time yet, but we'll be breaking down the Argos Tiger Cats game and also talking a little CFL. And fingers crossed, we'll have a special guest hopefully next week on the Argo Bounce live audio show. And I want to say thank you to everyone watching this live streamed on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, or X they call it now, and also on Apple, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and Radio Public, LinkedIn, etc., and also on WQEE 99.1 FM in Metro Atlanta, the home of Southern Talk in sports. And that's about it, Nick. But I'm looking forward to my next guest on my other show tomorrow. I'm going to plug that right now before we wrap this up. The next Live with CDP Sports Talk, Season 6, Episode 37, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet here in Guelph, will be tomorrow, Thursday, August 31st, 2 p.m. Eastern, with my guest, Luca Moa. He is the board operator and on-site technical producer with TSN 1050 in Toronto. So I hope everybody can tune into that show at 2 o'clock tomorrow on my regular Live with CDP Sports Talk. Quick thoughts, Nick, before we wrap this up.
Yep. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everybody, as always, for tuning in and listening to us. I'm still not 100% on whether I'm going to be at the game for Labor Day or not, but I'm hoping to be down there. If you're looking for something to do, I highly recommend making a day trip out of it. Go a little early in the day, head over and see the HMCS Haida, Canada's fightingest. Preserved as a museum ship, only about 5 minutes away from the stadium. So it's just behind in the industrial district there on the lake. So it's really easy to get to. And if you do that, go see it during the morning. Head over to Lot E or one of the other tailgate areas near the stadium, and then you can hang out for a couple hours, chat with other fans, have a couple drinks maybe, and then walk over to the stadium and the Labor Day game is a staple here at the CFL and is one of the most exciting. It's a lot different when you take it in person versus just seeing it on TV. Anybody who's out in Edmonton or in Calgary for there or in Saskatchewan over the weekend, go enjoy those games as well. And I wish you guys the best of luck and yeah, just have a very good time. Don't forget Montreal and time and enjoy your Labor Day weekend and celebrate some CFL football because this, along with Canada Day, is probably two of our most important weekends for the league.
And you can check out the Argonauts website at argonauts.ca. And Nick, quickly, where can people follow you on social media?
Yep. As always, Nick Small 38 with underscores on Twitter and I think with periods on Instagram. Yeah, give me a follow there if you want to chat. I'm always happy to hear your thoughts.
All right, and you guys can follow me here on Twitter at Chris D. Pomay. I tweet a lot on Twitter /X, and I'm all over the place on social media as well. But that's about it. I'm going to wrap up episode 7 of the Argo Bounce live audio show. I want to say thank you to everyone watching and also listening on our audio platforms and on WQE 99.1 FM. I'm looking forward to the games this weekend, especially Labor Day games. And as we say, Nick, go Argos.
Go Argos. Take care, everyone.
Good night, Nick. Thank you so much for coming on.
You too. See ya, Chris.
Good night, everybody.
fight the foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop. They pile up the points until they reach the top. Pull together till the Grey Cups won. Go Argos, go, go, go! Go Toronto Argos, go, go, go! Pull together, fight the foe. Scoring touchdowns for the blue on blue. The Argos will win for you. Full of fight and courage, you can't stop.